There are days on the calendar that pass like any other. And then there are days that seem to hum with something different. August 1st, 2nd and 3rd this year are not ordinary days. They carry a pulse, subtle yet insistent. You might feel it as a restlessness in your bones, a strange heaviness in the air, or an urge to withdraw from the world without quite knowing why. The chosen ones feel it most. This isn't about superstition or fear. It's about alignment, about a quiet opening that only stillness will let you pass through, if you're ready. The quiet call that only you can hear. It starts before the date even arrives. You might notice your mind drifting away from busy plans. Your body moves slower. Things that normally excite you suddenly feel hollow. No one around you seems to notice. They're rushing, buying, talking. But somewhere inside you feel a pull, a soft one, almost like a whisper from a different room. This call isn't a voice. It's more like a feeling in the chest that refuses to leave. Sometimes it shows up as discomfort, like you can't stand loud places. Sometimes it's a craving for an old chair, a cup of tea, and nothing else. But whatever shape it takes, it's for you alone. The strange part, you can ignore it and life will keep going. But that's where the danger lies. Not because something terrible will happen if you miss it, but because something rare might pass you by. Something your soul came here to touch. And it might not return in the same way again. I've noticed this call often arrives at the edge of change, right before a turn in the road. And if you're quiet enough, you may sense the texture of it. Heavy yet kind, patient but not endless. It waits, but only for a while. You might tell yourself it's just tiredness, just mood. But in the back of your mind, you'll feel a small ache, like the weight of an unopened letter you know is addressed to you, and only you can decide if you will open it. Sometimes the rarest messages in life aren't loud. They just keep standing quietly at your door until you're ready to notice them. Why these 3 days are not ordinary time. Most days flow into one another like water down a stream. But these 3, they are more like stones in the river, solid, unmoving, disrupting the flow. Energies align in ways that do not happen often. You might not see it with your eyes, but you will feel it somewhere beneath your skin. I've lived long enough to know that certain dates hold a rhythm. Patterns repeat. Events seem to cluster. And in these first days of August, something old comes back into focus. It may feel like a memory you never had, yet somehow recognize. Time has a strange way of bending during such periods. Minutes stretch. Conversations feel out of place. Even the weather can seem scripted. Not in a fearful way, but in a way that tells you there's more happening than meets the eye. Some believe these days mark the crossing of subtle thresholds, when the invisible becomes easier to sense. I won't tell you to believe or disbelieve, but I will tell you this: if you listen closely, you will catch details others miss, and in those details lies your guidance. These days are not here to test you. They are here to offer you something, but only if you're present enough to receive it. It's like the door to an old house that only opens once in a long while. The door will not wait for you to decide forever. What you choose to do inside that doorway will shape the way the rest of your year feels. The moment the outer world turns away, there are moments when the noise of the outside world feels like it's inescapable until suddenly it isn't. During these days, you may notice fewer calls, fewer demands, fewer interruptions. Or perhaps the interruptions will feel strangely far away, like voices speaking from behind thick glass. This isn't an accident. Sometimes the world seems to turn its gaze away just long enough for you to remember yourself. And when it does, that's the moment to pay attention. You might think, I should use this quiet to catch up on chores, but your soul will quietly suggest otherwise. The truth is, we often crave stillness and yet run from it when it arrives. We've been taught to fill silence before it fills us. But here's the secret. In these moments, silence doesn't come to trap you. It comes to hand you something. Think of it like the sea pulling back before a wave. The retreat isn't absence, it's preparation. And the more still you are, the bigger the wave that returns. Not a wave of destruction, but of clarity. When the outer world turns away, you get to see the edges of your own inner world again. And that's not always comfortable, but it's always telling the truth. Sometimes the quiet is not emptiness. Sometimes it's the sound of the universe taking a breath right beside you. When the sky speaks in silent language, we think of the sky as empty space, a canvas for clouds and light. But on certain days, it feels alive, heavy in a way that isn't just weather. These days, you may find yourself looking up more often. You might not even know why. Some say the sky changes tone during certain energy alignments. Not in obvious ways, no flashing lights or strange colours, but in subtler shifts. The air might feel thicker, or sounds might carry differently. And if you're alone, you'll notice these changes more clearly. The sky doesn't speak in sentences, it speaks in impressions. A sudden cool wind that brushes your cheek. A bird flying in a perfect circle above you. Clouds holding their shape longer than they should. These are small things, but they are also signals. Being home doesn't mean closing yourself away from the sky. It means being in a place where you can notice it without distraction. Where the conversation between you and the horizon isn't interrupted by the noise of strangers. What the sky offers isn't always an answer. Sometimes it's simply a reminder that you are part of something wider than your thoughts, larger than your problems. And on these days, that reminder might be the very thing you need to steady your path. A message doesn't need words to be understood. It only needs you to be present when it arrives. The energy that can only find you alone. There are certain energies that will never enter a crowded room. They don't push through chatter, don't fight for space. They arrive quietly, like a guest who knows exactly when to knock, and they only step inside if you're alone enough to notice. During these 3 days, that kind of energy will be moving. You might feel it as warmth in the chest, as a calm in your breathing, or as a sudden thought that feels wiser than you remember being. That's when you know you've been visited. Some call it guidance, some call it alignment. Whatever name you give it, the key is the same. It cannot be forced. You can't chase it down. You can only make space for it to come to you. That's why solitude isn't punishment. It's invitation. An open chair at a table only you can set. And on these days, that chair matters more than usual. The moment it arrives, you may feel both deeply comforted and strangely vulnerable. That's natural. It's the feeling of being seen, not by other people, but by the deeper currents of life itself. The rarest guests knock softly, and they leave the room brighter than they found it. There's a reason solitude holds such power during these days, and it's not just about receiving. Ahead, we'll walk into stranger territory, the kind where visitors don't knock at all, where dreams refuse to stay in the night, and where even your shadow begins to behave differently. The first 5 steps have been about hearing the call. The next ones are about stepping through it without turning back. How crowds can muffle your soul's signal. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to lose yourself in a crowd? Even if no one speaks to you, there's a kind of static in the air. So many thoughts, So many tiny emotional currents. They all brush against you without permission. And if you're sensitive, you start to forget which feelings are yours and which you've borrowed. On days like August 1st to 3rd, that static is louder. Not in decibels, but in subtle distortion. The signal from your own soul, that quiet guidance, gets harder to hear. It's like trying to listen to a gentle flute in the middle of a marching band. Some people think they're unaffected. They say, "I can handle it, I'm fine." But the truth is, the body still reacts. You may come home from a busy space more tired than expected, your mind buzzing, your dreams scattered. You might not even link it to the crowd. But your energy knows. The reason solitude is important during these days isn't because others are bad. It's because these days are about clear reception. You're being sent something precise, and precision can't compete with constant interference. You'll find that even familiar places, even well-meaning company, can dilute the fine details of what's coming to you, like ink dropped in clear water. Sometimes, to see the truth clearly, you need the water still and untouched. A message meant for you will not shout over the noise. It will simply wait until you're quiet enough to hear it. The home as a sacred shield. Your home is more than walls and a roof. It's the sum of every laugh, every tear, every night you've rested inside it. And over time it builds something around you. A shield made from your own life. On these special days, that shield becomes more important than ever. When you are home, you are within an energy you've shaped. You know its corners, its smells, its sounds. You know which floorboards creak and how the light shifts through the windows. It is the opposite of chaos. It is familiarity, and familiarity makes your spirit loosen its guard. Zarin once said that a home is not just where you live. It's where your soul recharges without asking for permission. That's why being home on these days doesn't mean being trapped. It means being in the safest place to open yourself to what's arriving. Think of it this way. When the air outside is turbulent, you close the windows, not to hide from the world, but to protect what's precious inside. These days are a kind of storm, not of rain, but of frequencies. And your home is the still harbour. It doesn't matter if your space is large or small. What matters is the intention you hold in it. Light a candle, clear a corner. Let the air feel fresh. Every act tells your inner self, you are safe to receive here. And safety is the first door to clarity. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is simply stay where your spirit already knows it belongs. The visitors that do not knock. Not every guest announces themselves. Some arrive without sound, without form, and yet, you know they're there. These visitors are not always physical. Some are thoughts that don't feel like your own. Some are feelings that slip in without a story. On days like these, their presence is stronger. It's not about ghosts in the way stories tell it. It's about energy intersections. Points in time where your field is more accessible to certain currents, and certain currents are more curious than usual. That's why solitude matters. You notice the subtleties more, and you can choose how to respond. You may feel a shift in the air, like it thickened for no reason. Or you may get chills without being cold. Sometimes you'll find your attention pulled to a corner of the room, or a certain object, without knowing why. These are signals that something is brushing your field. The truth is, not all visitors are meant to stay, and not all are harmful either. Some simply pass through, carrying fragments of information. The choice is whether you'll engage or let them move on. But you can only make that choice if you notice them. And noticing requires space, mental, emotional, and physical. If you're crowded in conversation or surrounded by noise, you'll miss the arrival entirely, which means you'll also miss the gift or the warning they carried. Presence is not about looking harder. It's about softening enough to sense what was already beside you. Dreams that are more than dreams. During these days, your nights might feel heavier and stranger. Dreams could become sharper, more detailed, yet harder to hold on to when you wake. It's as if something doesn't want you to remember them fully. And yet, you're left with an aftertaste, an emotion you can't shake. These dreams are not always random. They are messages, rehearsals, even meetings. Your sleeping hours can become a theatre for truths you can't yet face in the daylight. That's why staying home matters. Because a calm, grounded waking life can make the dream space clearer. You may notice themes repeating. A certain person you haven't seen in years. A landscape that feels like home but isn't. An animal that keeps appearing. These are threads. They're not there to entertain you. They're weaving something your waking mind will later understand. Sometimes the dream is not about its plot at all. It's about the feeling it leaves in your body. That unease or that unexpected peace can tell you more than the images. Pay attention to how you wake, not just to what you see. And here's the quiet truth. Dreams have their own timing. What you don't understand tonight might reveal itself months from now. They're patient, but they are never pointless. A dream is a bridge, and on these nights you may be walking across without even knowing it. The message hidden in August's first breath. There's something about the first morning of August this year that feels different. You might notice the air itself carries a certain weight or lightness. The way you read it will depend on where your spirit is standing. But either way, it's not ordinary air. The first breath of August is not a poetic idea. It's the moment the shift begins to ripple. You may feel it before sunrise, a subtle alertness in your body, or you may notice it in the way sunlight feels softer, yet more pointed on your skin. Many ignore such feelings. They get up, rush into routine, never realizing they stepped over a threshold without pausing to look. But for the chosen ones, these first breaths are like markers. They tell you the window is open, the current is flowing, and the time to listen has begun. This isn't about rituals or fixed rules. It's about presence, about recognizing that even air can speak if you know how to hear it. And what it says will not be in words. It will be in how your heart reacts when you let it in. The energy of this breath will linger through the next days, but its clarity fades as the hours pass, which is why noticing it in its rawest form, before the world has touched it, is so rare. One breath can hold an entire season of change, if you're willing to feel it fully. And as the days unfold, something deeper stirs. Not in the sky, not in your dreams, but in the very shadow you've been carrying all your life. Ahead, we'll step into the moments when your shadow begins to speak, when the unseen exchange becomes impossible to ignore, and when the quiet watching of these nights reveals exactly why these 3 days were never meant to be lived in the ordinary way. When your shadow steps into the light, there's a part of you that stays quiet most of the time. Not because it's hiding, but because you rarely give it room to speak. That part, your shadow, is the keeper of everything you've avoided. The grief you never processed, the truth you never told, the fears you tucked away and promised to deal with later. During these days, that shadow starts to move closer to the surface. It won't come at you with drama. It will simply appear in small ways. You might think of someone you haven't in decades, and remember the ache they left behind. Or you'll feel an old shame for no reason at all. That's not weakness. That's memory being called to the front. The strange thing is, your shadow doesn't come to harm you. It comes because the light is finally steady enough for it to step into. The stillness of these days, the absence of the usual noise, creates a space where even your deepest parts feel safe to be seen. When you let the shadow speak, you find it's not the enemy you thought it was. It's more like a tired traveler who's been carrying heavy bags for too long, waiting for you to notice. And when you do, something inside softens, your edges loosen, your breathing deepens. You don't have to solve everything it brings. You just have to sit with it. Give it the respect it's been waiting for. And in that quiet, you might notice something surprising. The shadow has been holding pieces of your strength all along. Sometimes the thing you fear most in yourself is the missing part of your wholeness. The unseen exchange happening in stillness. When the world slows, when you choose to be alone, there's more going on than meets the eye. Stillness isn't absence, it's a stage. And on that stage, an exchange begins. Not one you can see, not one you can measure, but one you can feel. This exchange is between you and the field around you, the invisible web of energy that's always touching you. Most days, the contact is faint, drowned out by the noise of life. But during these days, with your home quiet and your mind settled, the connection strengthens. You might notice this as warmth that seems to radiate from nowhere, or as a gentle tingling at your fingertips. Sometimes it comes as a sudden knowing, an answer to a question you hadn't even asked yet. That's the exchange taking shape. You give your stillness, it gives you clarity. It's not always comfortable. The field might bring up things you didn't expect, feelings, memories, sudden urges to write, to cry, to move your body in a certain way. That's all part of the trade. It's giving you exactly what your soul has been asking for, even if you didn't realize you'd been asking. The beauty of this exchange is that it's never one way. Every moment of openness you give sends ripples into the world. And somewhere, someone you've never met might be feeling those ripples right now, without knowing they came from you. Stillness is never just for you. It's a meeting point where the whole world can touch, while your spirit feels watched these nights. It can be unsettling, that quiet sense of being observed, even when you know no one is there. On these nights, it's more common than you think, and it isn't always a bad thing. There are eyes that watch in judgment, and then there are eyes that watch in recognition. What you may be feeling is the latter. Energies, some ancient, some close to home, paying attention to the way you are opening. It's not that they control you, it's that they're curious about the unfolding. Think of it like an artist painting in public. People stop to watch, not to interfere, but because the act itself is rare. In the same way, when you spend these nights in awareness, you send out a frequency that draws attention from the unseen. Sometimes, the sensation will make you feel cautious. Other times, strangely comforted. Either way, it's a reminder that your journey isn't happening in isolation. Even in solitude, you are in a kind of quiet conversation with the wider universe. The key is not to fear the watching. Fear makes the connection heavy. Curiosity keeps it light. And if you lean into that curiosity, you may find yourself sensing more. Subtle movements, quiet impressions, a faint hum that wasn't there before. Not all witnesses speak. Some just want you to know they see you. The test of refusing the noise. Noise comes in many forms. Not just sound, but information, opinions, demands. It's the constant pull to react, to respond, to answer something immediately. These days will test how much of that you can step away from. It's easy to say you want peace, but harder to choose it when the phone lights up, when the news blares, when a message demands your attention. And yet, that's the test. Can you choose your own voice over the endless flood of others? In these moments, every distraction you ignore is a signal to your deeper self. You matter more than this. That's not selfishness, that's alignment. And alignment on these days is the real goal. Of course, the noise will try harder. You might get unexpected calls, sudden arguments, urgent sounding news. These are not coincidences. The outer world feels when you're pulling away, and it reacts. Not out of malice, but because it's used to having your constant attention. Every time you resist, you create space for something truer to come through. And it will, softly, without drama. The way a flower grows while no one's watching. Some of the most important victories in life are the quiet ones no one else will ever see. Memories that arrive without a past. On these days, you might experience something unusual. Memories that don't seem to belong to this life. They arrive suddenly, without warning. A smell that takes you somewhere you've never been. A face you recognize but have never met. A feeling of loss for something you can't name. These aren't mistakes of the mind. They're fragments surfacing from deeper layers, ancestral echoes, old soul experiences, even glimpses of parallel selves. They come now because the stillness you've chosen makes you an open field for them to land in. Some will feel comforting, like reuniting with an old friend. Others may be sharp, stirring emotions you can't place. It's tempting to push them away, to label them as daydreams, but they hold pieces of understanding you might need later. You don't have to decode them immediately, just notice them. Sit with the feeling they bring. Often the meaning of such memories blooms slowly, in its own time, when you've stopped forcing it. And here's the thing, these memories aren't random. They come to remind you that your life is wider than you think, that you've walked many paths to arrive here, and that nothing you're living now is without deeper context. Sometimes the strangest memories are just your soul showing you. You've been here in some way before. The power in choosing to be unreachable. There's a quiet strength in stepping out of reach, not disappearing, not hiding, just becoming unavailable to the constant tap on your shoulder that life so often demands. These days, that choice holds more weight than usual, because the less reachable you are to the world, the more reachable you are to yourself. It's not about ignoring people. It's about telling the noise, wait. It's about letting your energy gather instead of scatter. And when you do, you might feel something rare. The sensation of being centered in your own life again, as if you'd been leaning too far forward for years. At first, the urge to check in, to respond, will itch at you. But if you breathe through it, a shift happens. The pull toward out there fades, and in its place comes a steady hum. One you might not have heard since you were much younger. The hum of your own essence. In that space, thoughts slow down. You notice the patterns of your breathing. You catch the flicker of feelings before they vanish. And you begin to sense the threads connecting everything, not as ideas, but as a living, breathing reality. You become unreachable, not to push the world away, but to let your world grow inward. Like a tree drawing its sap back in winter, not in retreat, but in preparation. Sometimes the most powerful presence is the one the world can't touch.